Hello, I'm Smay Ceylan, and you're watching Playback, Tier 2 World's weekly showcase of our best stories from around the globe. Coming up, Europe's energy crisis could get even worse as several leaks are detected on the Nord Stream pipelines that bring gas from Russia to Europe. We look at the ceasefire deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia 2 years after Baku liberated occupied territories in a 2020 conflict. And floods, hurricanes, droughts, and famine. We look at the devastating impacts of the climate crisis around the world. NATO says there are signs of sabotage after multiple leaks were detected in the Nord Stream. The underwater pipelines are designed to bring gas from Russia to Europe, and the infrastructure has been at the center of the energy crisis in Europe, caused by the conflict in Ukraine. Talha Duman has more.
Russia's Nord Stream gas pipelines are leaking. 3 separate pipelines in the Baltic Sea sprung leaks almost simultaneously on Tuesday, and some suspect sabotage.
At this stage, it's very premature to speculate on what the causes are. As I said, we've been informed about the situation by the member states concerned, and the member states are looking into this issue. We will remain in close contact with them, but it's really not the moment to speculate on what the potential causes could be.
The pipeline system, which carries gas from Russia to Germany from where it's distributed around northern Europe, has been a key flashpoint in an escalating energy war. A 3-day planned suspension of gas deliveries via Nord Stream 1 pipeline in early September led to gas prices to shoot up in Europe. And the leaks have once again reminded the continent of Moscow's leverage over its energy supply. Stopping short of accusation, officials from Denmark and Germany suggested that the circumstances point to sabotage. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says it's too soon to speculate.
The leaks are under investigation. There are initial reports indicating that this may be the result of an attack or some kind of sabotage, but these are initial reports and we haven't confirmed that yet.
Nord Stream says it's impossible to estimate when the gas network might be operational again, leaving northern Europeans facing the prospect of an uncertain and bleak winter. Talha Duman, TRT World.
Tuesday marked 2 years since the start of the 2020 war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. In that conflict, Baku fought to take back areas that had been internationally recognized as its territory, but which had been occupied for more than 20 years. A ceasefire deal was reached to end the fighting, but the problems between the two countries have remained. Our diplomatic correspondent Andrew Hopkins reports.
2 years ago, when the fighting started between Azerbaijan and Armenia, it wasn't a surprise to some. There'd been sporadic outbreaks of violence since the first war ended 26 years before, mainly over unresolved issues created by that conflict.
The Azerbaijani army is currently shelling and striking the enemy's military positions. And as a result of these attacks, much of the enemy's military equipment has been destroyed.
The first Nagorno-Karabakh war erupted in 1988. Tens of thousands of people were killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. Armenians in Azerbaijan wanted to unite with their compatriots across the border. A ceasefire was eventually agreed in 1994, but parts of the region remained in Armenian hands. The 2020 war lasted just 44 days, but several thousand more people died as a result. Azerbaijan took back districts held by Armenian forces. They were supported militarily and diplomatically by Turkey, including with its drones.
To put Armenia and Azerbaijan on equal footing means awarding the occupier. The world must be on the side of those who are right, namely on the side of Azerbaijan.
It was only when Azerbaijani forces retook the city of Shusha that November that a more permanent ceasefire was reached.
The army said that it was necessary to stop because there are problems that have no prospects for solutions or resources are exhausted.
Since then, 2,000 Russian peacekeepers have been monitoring the truce, but it hasn't always held. Some parts of the deal haven't been realised, such as the opening of a transport corridor between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and there are still arguments over where the borders should be. Andrew Hopkins, TRT World.
Malaria and other waterborne diseases are now tearing through Pakistan's flood-devastated regions. Hundreds of thousands of people are now living in the open, and the stagnant floodwaters may take between 2 to 6 months to recede. Already they have caused widespread eye infections, malaria and dengue fever. TRT World's Jafar Hasnain sent this report from Jamshoro in Sindh province.
His fever is not letting up, and his condition is getting worse by the day. This father is worried his 4-year-old boy has contracted a life-threatening waterborne disease.
Everyone has fever here. My child has high-grade fever. There are so many dengue and malaria mosquitoes in this place. We don't have medicines, we don't have food to eat or fresh water to drink. We drink this dirty flood water.
In this village in Sindh province, floodwater has been standing for more than a month, fueling a major outbreak of vector-borne diseases such as dengue and malaria. This family has already lost 3 children to what they believe was malaria.
3 of our children have died due to malaria. We couldn't find medicines to save them. We couldn't reduce their fever. We are asking the government for help.
The UN says more than 43,000 cases of malaria were reported in southern Pakistan last week. And with water still standing in major parts of flood-ravaged Pakistan, the number of dengue and malaria cases is rising across the country. The elderly are also at risk. This 76-year-old woman has been showing symptoms of a waterborne disease for almost a week.
I have diarrhea and high fever. I've been vomiting for days now. I haven't taken any medicine. We are very poor. No one is helping us.
As demand exceeds supply, basic medicines for reducing fever and malaria are hard to find in pharmacies. More than 330 people have already died due to waterborne diseases in the country, and experts say its death toll could soon exceed that of the floods. As Pakistan goes through a massive shortage of medicines for dengue and malaria, experts are warning if these people are not granted access to these life-saving medicines, they won't make it. Jafar Hasnan, TRT World, Jamshoro, Sindh.
Well, millions of people in Florida are without power after Hurricane Ian slammed into the U.S. state on Wednesday. Streets have been turned into rivers, and warnings of flash flooding are in place for areas in the path of the storm. Ian is one of the strongest hurricanes to hit Florida in recent years. It's brought with its winds capable of ripping through buildings. Craig Boswell reports from Washington.
Hurricane Ian has slammed the southwest coast of Florida, coming ashore with 241 km/h winds, torrential rains, and a potentially catastrophic storm surge. The storm is one of the strongest recorded in the U.S. in recent years.
Hurricane Ian is and will continue to be a very dangerous and life-threatening storm. And this is going to be for the days ahead.
The hurricane center struck just west of Fort Myers, a heavily populated city. Just hours after making landfall, millions of people were without power across the state as winds and water damaged homes and washed out roads and bridges.
Stay off the roads. There's no need to rush back. You're going to have a massive surge of people that are going to be going in to provide, of course, life safety assistance for those who may have stayed in some of the more hazardous areas.
Emergency responders received calls from those who remained in evacuation zones, but immediate rescue was far too dangerous. More than 2.5 million people were told to leave before Ian hit. Images from the International Space Station show the sheer size of the storm. An engineer on a flight to collect data on Ian felt its strength firsthand as the aircraft passed through the hurricane's eye wall. As the storm moves across central Florida, there are warnings of more damaging wind and rain. Up to nearly a half meter of rain is expected to fall, prompting warnings that the worst may yet to come.
Overwhelmingly, it's been that surge that has been the biggest issue, and the flooding that has resulted as a result of that. In some areas, we think it's hit 12 feet.
Over the last decade, Florida's population has skyrocketed by 3 million, placing more people in Ian's path. U.S. President Joe Biden says they'll get help soon.
We'll be there at every step of the way. That's my absolute commitment to the people of the state of Florida.
Much of the damage will remain unknown until daybreak. Ian is expected to remain a hurricane well into Thursday, hitting other Florida cities before moving back into the Atlantic Ocean. Craig Boswell, TRT World.
The U.S. is also confronting another disaster. President Joe Biden has opened the first White House conference on hunger in more than 50 years. Official figures suggest more than 34 million people in the country are afflicted by food insecurity. Our North America correspondent John Brain reports.
It may be described as the land of plenty, but not everyone in the U.S. is benefiting from the American dream. This food bank in Chicago has seen a 40% increase in visitors this year, with thousands of people registering for free groceries for the first time in their lives.
Inflation is through the roof. You gotta decide between medication and food.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Everything going up, but shit, you can't spend. You go to the store with $10, $20, you ain't come out with one bag. You know, you really can't win.
More than 34 million people in the US are categorized as food insecure. 9 million of them are children. 1 in 5 families report not having enough to eat.
The reality is the pandemic hit so many folks hard, and now this is kind of a 1-2 punch, right? Even if they were getting a little bit more stable on their feet, now here comes inflation with the cost of food going up 12-ish% on average. Their money's just not going as far, and they're needing to find other ways to put food on their table.
The first and only previous US hunger conference in 1969 resulted in a major expansion of the food stamp program and free school lunches. Joe Biden said it was time to build on what had been a huge achievement.
That single conference and the laws that inspired led to transformational change that has helped millions of Americans live healthier lives for generations. Since that time, advances in research and medicine have taught us so much more about nutrition and health. And today, I'm convening this conference again because I believe we can use these advances to do even more to make America stronger and a healthier nation.
It's hoped that Wednesday's conference will put the US on the path towards achieving the White House's aim of ending all hunger and DART-related diseases in the country by 2030. John Brain, TRT World.
Colombia and Venezuela have been bitter political rivals for the past 8 years. But this week, the South American neighbors opened their main border bridge to trade. It's a sign of improving relations following the election of Colombia's first leftist president in August. Manuel Rueda has the story.
Trucks rumbled across the main border bridge between Venezuela and Colombia, as the countries took a step towards improving their often difficult relationship. This bridge had been closed to cargo traffic for 7 years. Its opening was attended by Colombia's recently elected president, Gustavo Petro, who called it a historic moment.
This isn't just a cement bridge, but a pathway towards a better future, a way to build progress in the region.
For years, the governments of socialist Venezuela and conservative Colombia were ideological foes. They blamed each other for crime and smuggling along their 1,300-mile-long border, and that led to frequent closures. But things started to change this year after Petro, a leftist, was elected to the presidency. Petro has promised to make peace deals with rebel groups that still operate in Colombia. To do that, he needs the Venezuelan government's help.
There are groups like the National Liberation Army that operate on both sides of the border. So if you wanted to make peace with them, you would need the Venezuelan government.
Meanwhile, in Colombian border towns like Cúcuta, People are hoping that better relations will boost the local economy. Yesid Sarmiento runs a customs agency. He believes the reopening of the border to cargo trucks will create hundreds of jobs in his industry.
We have lots of products that we can sell at a good price, like beef or rice, and despite its problems, Venezuela has a way to buy them.
On the Venezuelan side, businesses are hoping that with the border open to trade, it'll be cheaper for them to get raw materials.
I will not have to pay smugglers to get my flour across the border now. I hope that if I can import goods legally, that will reduce my production costs.
The border between Colombia and Venezuela hasn't functioned normally since 2014. Back then, trade between the countries generated about $2 billion per year. The residents of this region are hoping that as both countries strengthen relations, their governments will also work together to tackle criminal groups that operate on both sides of the border. Manuel Rueda, TRT World, Cúcuta, Colombia.
The UK opposition leader says the government has lost control of the country's economy. Keir Starmer's comments followed a crash in the British pound, which sunk to its lowest ever level against the US dollar. It has since slightly recovered. Our correspondent Sarah Morse takes a look at the impact the weak currency is having on a country already dealing with a cost of living crisis.
The British pound, once considered one of the world's strongest currencies, is now tumbling. Its value against the US dollar has dropped 21% this year, hitting all-time lows on Monday. The latest plunge was triggered by the UK's new government announcing $48 billion worth of tax cuts last week. The move is a gamble. The Treasury is borrowing billions to fund the cuts, hoping it will stimulate growth, ease the cost of living crisis and spur Britain's stagnant economy. Instead, it spooked the markets.
And right now, investors are looking at the UK fundamentals, and what they see is a lot of debt. They see an economy which is going into recession, and they see a lot of inflation. And investors do not like that.
The Bank of England managed to calm currency traders slightly by announcing it would not shy away from hefty interest rate rises to control inflation.
While that move did spark a small rally in the pound, it's also rattled banks like Halifax here. It's the UK's largest mortgage lender, and it's now suspended some of its home loan products as it waits to find out what's going to happen with interest rates.
It's not just mortgages impacted by the spiralling pound. The UK imports around 40% of its food, so grocery prices will rise, as will petrol, because wholesale oil is priced in American dollars, making it more expensive to buy with the devalued pound.
We can't go on like this. What we've seen in the past few days has no precedent. The government has lost control of the British economy.
For decades, the UK has been a bastion of financial security, but investors now consider it a riskier market than the traditionally fiscally weak countries of Italy and Greece. And just as it embarks on its post-Brexit journey, it would seem stable Britain is walking a wobbly path. Sarah Morris, TRT World, London.
Now to Iraq, where it's been almost 1 year since voters went to the polls, yet there is still no sign of a functioning government. And this protracted political crisis has left the country's younger generation adrift. Alanna Travers reports from Baghdad.
In Iraq, the government sector is not collaborating with young people. Only those who are close to the politicians, their friends, or in their parties get access to job opportunities.
The country's most recent elections last October have yet to result in the formation of a new government. Last month, an initial political disagreement resulted in clashes as competing groups took to the street.
It's been 11 months since Iraq's elections and the government hasn't been formed yet. The budget hasn't been approved. One of the main problems in Iraq is the lack of planning, and there are thousands of unemployed people protesting.
Even those who work in the government have expressed frustration with the direction of their country's future, including Anmar Abed, who works in the education ministry.
The main cause for all of this is lack of planning to find a solution to employ young people. We have a Ministry of Planning, but we still haven't seen any plan that they are working on until today.
60% of the population are under the age of 25, and last year's Iraq Labour Force survey reported that 36% of the country's 15 to 24-year-olds are not in education, employment or training. High unemployment levels, combined with the ongoing nepotism, abuse of power and concurrent environmental crises in Iraq, is exacerbating the challenges its young people are forced to navigate. Most of the well-connected of the 700,000 18-year-olds who enter the workforce annually, they say, find government jobs. But some here are seeking positions in the private sector.
A lot of young people face problems when they start up their projects with amazing ideas. They are shocked when they can't last for more than a year. They need more support from government and private companies to receive practical training that allows them to enter the real market in the right way.
Baghdad's Hardin British Centre is one example of a successful startup created by young people to educate others in a range of languages, including Turkish and Korean. Their co-founders, brothers Marwan, Hardin and Rokan, say their achievements have little to do with government support.
The center started completely independently from the government 6 months ago to create proper opportunities for the teachers and proper opportunities for young people, based around improving education.
Many hope that by the time this next generation graduates, there'll be more opportunities for Iraq's young people. Much rests on whether the country's political class can put aside their own interests in the coming months. Alana Travers, Baghdad, TRT World.
It's a historic week for NASA and potentially the entire world. For the first time, the U.S. Space Agency has intentionally crashed a spacecraft into an asteroid for what is being described as the first test of a planetary defense system. The mission's objective is to find a way to protect our planet if any cosmic body were set to collide with Earth. Craig Boswell is in Washington with more.
The various rocks on the surface.
These are the final seconds of NASA's mission to test whether its technology can deflect an asteroid if it were threatening Earth. The image on the screen is Dimorphos. It's an asteroid more than 11 million kilometers from Earth. Dimorphos is about 150 meters wide, and the U.S. Space Agency just plowed into it with a 1,200-pound spacecraft about the size of a refrigerator traveling at 14,000 miles per hour.
3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. Awaiting visual confirmation. All right.
The mission is part of a global effort to prepare for such a potential event. DART, or the Double Asteroid Redirect Test, is meant to nudge a celestial body out of its orbit if it were headed for our planet.
NASA works for the benefit of humanity. So for us, it's the ultimate fulfillment of our mission to do something like this, a technology demonstration that, who knows, someday could save our home.
DART was launched last November. It's been guided by NASA flight directors, but the final hours on Monday night were handled by an onboard navigation system until its collision, a mission that had to crash to succeed.
It was incredible. To see how so many years of hard work and creativity resulted in a direct hit of Dimorphos was just an adrenaline rush.
Back in 2005, Congress mandated NASA to locate 90% of near-Earth asteroids large enough to destroy a city. That's those that are 140 meters or wider in diameter. The deadline was 2020, but because Congress didn't provide much money for the tasks, that deadline came and went. Scientists estimate there are still some 15,000 more asteroids of that size to discover. Dimorphos, DART's celestial target, was not a threat to Earth, but was determined the best subject. The test results from the DART spacecraft's 756 million kilometer journey and crash will not be known until sometime in October, when a new round of telescope observations calculate the orbit of the now famous space rock called Dimorphos. Craig Boswell, TRT World, Washington.
After the first stage, DART drifts away from the Falcon 9 seconds.
Well, that rounds up your week of news here on Playback. Stay tuned to TRT World for the latest stories.